Hello, welcome to Bob's Dungeon. My name's Bob, I'll be your host. The campaign setting can be one of the most important parts in a game, other than players, of course. And a campaign setting is basically the world that the game takes place in. It gives place for the players to live, place for them to adventure, and so forth. And there are lots of games out there that have campaign settings written for them. And we're going to talk about one of those in this video. This one is for the Lamentations Flame Princess. We're going to look at Carcosa. This book has 275 pages and a copyright of 2011. It was published by Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and all the artwork in this book is in black and white. It's pretty decent. So let's go ahead and look at that artwork. All of the artwork in this book is in black and white. And it's pretty decent with a lot of good details in all the work. And it goes a long way to setting a proper tone and mood for this book, with a lot of neat monsters that you can add to your game. To use this book, what you're going to need is a copy of the Lamentations of the Flame Princess core book, and of course a copy of this book, and a full set of dice. A full set of dice containing a 20-sided die, a 12-sided die, preferably two 10-sided dice for rolling both percentiles and tens, an 8-sided die, a 6-sided die, and a 4-sided die. This book is pretty neat. It's small, but it's pretty well made. It's got a hardback cover. It's got this slip cover over it that has the name. It's pretty cool. This book has all kinds of information for you for this setting and some alternate rules for your Lamentations game. The alternate rules are a little strange. It involves the dice, your hit dice, and the damage dice that you do. First off, as you gain levels, of course, you gain a new hit die per level, and as soon as you gain them, you normally roll them and add them together to come up with your hit points. But in this game, you don't roll your hit points up as you gain hit dice. Instead, when you get into combat, you roll however many dice you have for your hit dice. So if you're a 4th level character, you'll roll 4 dice. If you're a 2nd level character, you roll 2, and so forth. Now, the die you roll for your hit points is not really class-based. Instead, what they do is you roll a 20-sided die and compare it to a chart. And it'll tell you what die you need to roll for your hit points. And this will be anything from a 4-sided die all the way up to a 12-sided die. And when you roll them, you keep the dice as they roll in front of you on the table, line them up, highest to lowest, and if you have a constitution bonus or negative, you twist the die, turn the dice so that the number is equal to whatever the plus and bonus is. Now, if it takes it beyond the die's cap, you'll get a 4-sided die out and set it on top of there, or beside it, however it works for you. Then as you take damage, you start at the highest die and start rolling it down until all the hit points are depleted from that die, and you take it away and start on the next die. And the reason this is done is after the combat, you keep whatever dice remain in front of you. When you get into your next combat and you take a hit, you roll your new hit dice, you figure out what die you need to roll for your hit points, and then instead of rolling your full hit dice, if you had to remove any, you roll whatever's left. And that would be the dice sitting in front of you. For damage in combat, if you score a hit in combat, then you roll all the dice. The 20, the 12, the 10, and on down the line. And once you roll them, you look at the 20-sided die and compare it to the same chart you got your hit points die from. And that's the die you use for your damage. And you've already rolled it, so you just pick the die out. And all the weapons do 1 die in this in this setting. But certain weapons will have more than that. And it'll say in here. And if it does, then you'll roll the extra die afterwards. So that's kind of weird. As far as character options go, there are only 2 classes in this campaign setting. The fighter, which is presented in the core book, and the sorcerer, which is a new class they developed for the game in this book. And it's weird. It's not exactly like a wizard. They have rituals, but in order to conduct the rituals, they have to do sacrifices, and they gain some negatives and stuff. And it explains it all in here. And it's really weird. There are also different races you can be in this game, but there are no elves, there are no dwarves, there are no halflings, none of that. Instead, there are 13 different types of humans, each one a different color. And what I mean by that is you have blue ones, green ones, orange ones, and just all kinds of weird colors of the rainbow, and even a few colors that are made up. But the thing about them is a blue human and a green human can't reproduce together. A brown human and an orange human can't reproduce, and it's really weird. And it explains in here. There's even clear humans, which look like skeletons because all their organs and flesh and muscle tissue is clear, so all you see is their bones. And that's kind of nifty. But you could use this setting in a different game, such as Dungeon Crawl Classics, or the basic fantasy roleplay, or even 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. And you'd have to do some modifications to it, of course, but it can work out. And the book says in here that it's your book, you bought it, and if you want to include the other races and classes, go for it. But the book is heavily influenced, the setting, by H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard and sci-fi, fantasy, and horror stories such as that. There is another player option in here for the use of psionics, and it tells you how to figure out whether you have access to psionics or not, and how they're used. It's got a bunch of different rituals for your sorcerers in here. It's got a bunch of different psionics, and basically you're stuck on this world with a bunch of the elder gods straight out of H.P. Lovecraft, which is kind of nifty. The most numerous race on the planet is from Shub Nagarath, and his offspring and creations are what mostly populate the planet, and you have to deal with them a bunch. There were also aliens that were on this planet, so there's a lot of leftover alien technology and stuff that you can find and use. All the humans are pretty primitive. Basically, the governments exist in like village states, and all the villages, you probably won't find one more than 500 people in a village. So that's kind of nifty. It gives, on the front cover, on the inside front cover, it has a hex map to show you the lay of the land. And in the book, it gives you a description of what each hex is like, and gives you 2 locations in there. And the hexes represent an area big enough that there's a lot of undescribed details that you can fill in for yourself. There are some adventures you can run in here. And on the inside back cover, it has a close-up of one of the hexes that involve one of the adventures. It gives more information and detail about what's in there. It's got a bunch of monsters you can add to your game, which is really cool. It's also got a chapter full of charts to create robots that were left behind. So that's pretty nifty. A chart to create new alien technologies for your game. It's even got an equipment section with alien technologies in it. So you have some pre-made stuff. It's got a chart for figuring out what all the offspring of Shob Nagoroth look like, because they're all individuals. And it's pretty neat. It's got a section here to describe mutations, because there are certain things in this book that will cause your characters to mutate. They give a simple chart and then prompt you to be as creative as you want and create and just go wild with the mutations if you want. So it's pretty neat. I kind of like it. There are some things I don't, but I really dig the horror alien aspect of this book. Which brings me to 3 questions. Would I play a character in this setting? And yes, I would. I like the horror aspect and stuff. So yeah, I'd play it. That's a little bit of a downer, the restrictiveness of the classes and the races, but it does say it's your game, do what you want. So I might tweak that a little bit. Would I run this setting? And I'm going to say, yeah, I've had some people that were interested. It would be really neat. Would I recommend this book? This book might not be for everybody, but it's got some really neat ideas in it, and is a pretty good set up for Lamentations of Flame Princess. And if you're a fan of that, or other OSRs, it would be worth checking out. Thank you for joining me at a look at this book, and hopefully you'll join me next time where we'll talk about something else. Bye.